was 8 years old. My little brother Dylan went missing. He was 4 at the time, and he'd been out in the fenced-in backyard one minute and gone the next. Everyone went crazy looking for him, of course. Sheriff's office, police, my parents, friends, and neighbors. At first, everyone said we'd find him within the first day. Though, even at 8, I could hear the kind lie in their voice. There was no sign of a gate being left open, or a gap in the fence large enough for him to squeeze through, which meant that someone had snatched him, and unless we got an idea of who, or they contacted us, well, how were we ever going to get him back? By the third day, the talk had turned from finding him to waiting for a call from whoever took him. That and advertising, every way my parents could think of to get his name and picture out to as many people as possible. They pushed the news stations to cover it morning, noon, and night, and for a week or so they did. But as more time passed and new stories came in, the daily reminder to call if you saw him got pushed to the back of the hour, and then it was gone. My parents weren't dumb and knew this would happen, of course. They took out TV ads and put stuff on the internet, though back then the web was not as big and popular as it is now, and the television ads were expensive. Fortunately, my mother's business was a local print shop, and she wasted no time in printing up thousands of flyers that we posted all over our part of the state. For the next year, that was our routine. Every weekend and some weekdays after work and school, we would load up and put flyers in new areas, and replace those that time and weather had eaten away. All of them were the same. The words, "Have you seen me?" followed by a recent picture of Dylan and the final line of, "Please call," and then my mother's cell phone number. We spent so many hours in the car with stacks of those flyers. It felt like Dylan's ghost was haunting us through the whispered rustle of reams of paper, each of them a frozen reminder of Dylan's face, staring out at us, asking why we wouldn't help him come home. By the time I was 11, my parents had divorced. My father had hung into the crusade to find their son for the first year, but when year 3 was getting close, he finally had enough. They argued and fought for a couple weeks, and then he packed up and moved across town. Within the year, he'd taken a job in another state, and I mainly saw him at Christmas for a day or two after that. I wanted to hate him, and I guess in my way I did, but not because he'd left. Because he'd left me behind. My mother had become so focused and passionate about finding Dylan that everything else fell by the wayside. And even after any reasonable hope was lost, she didn't slow down. I know from the outside that might sound like a good thing, like she was being a good and dedicated parent trying to find her child, but it was more than that. I didn't know the analogy then, but looking back when I was older, I likened it to a soldier who can't be comfortable in life without war after so long on the battlefield. It was like she needed it to continue, not just searching for him and putting up the flyers, but being seen doing it, talking to people about it, getting their sympathy and compliments and well wishes. The grieving, heroic mother had become her entire persona, and over time I came to understand she didn't know how to let it go. Still, over time, it let go of her. Life moves on. People forget. And old tragedies are replaced by new ones. I remember how angry my mother was when a little girl went missing my first year of high school. Even when the girl was found 2 days later, she would stalk around the house muttering and in a foul mood. If you asked her, she would say it was because it would make people forget about our Dylan even more. But I remember feeling uneasy when she'd said that. Because, well, I could hear the lie in her voice, too. As I'd gotten older, I'd done what I could to avoid her ongoing campaign. I'd have to help some weekends still, but for the most part, I made sure that I had enough extracurricular activities to keep me away. I think she actually preferred that. It was easier to play on people's sympathy and get attention when she could tell everyone she didn't have anyone to help her keep searching for her missing son. Still, I could tell something was coming, like pressure building in the atmosphere before a storm. Something was going to break soon. My hope was that she'd reach the point where she'd give up on finding Dylan and just live her life again, both for her and for me. Instead, one day she woke me up around 4 in the morning and told me we had to go. She was clearly distraught, sweating and crying and barely able to talk. I didn't know what was going on. Had she found out something about Dylan? Had something happened to Dad? What was it? She just waved away my questions and told me to come get in the car, that we had to go now, and that she'd explain when there was time. I did as I was told, though by this point I was fully awake and growing increasingly terrified. When she got behind the wheel, I half expected her to peel out of the driveway and shoot off at top speed, but she didn't. Instead, she drove slowly and quietly, not even turning on her headlights until we were out of the neighborhood. "Mom? What's going on?" She glanced over at me, sweat still pouring down her cheeks. "It'll be okay. Just wait. We're gonna make it right." I turned and stared out at the passing dark. "Is it Daddy? Is he okay?" My mother gave a harsh laugh. "Oh, I'm sure he's fine. Living it up with his whore girlfriend, I'm sure." She put a hand on her other arm and rubbed it as she gave me a sour look. "Don't worry about him." I wanted to respond, but didn't quite dare. She was more crazy acting than usual, and I didn't know what might make it worse. So I just sat silent for the next few minutes, wondering more and more where we were going in the middle of the night. When the car suddenly veered off the road into the ditch, I had a moment of unreality where I felt like I was the thing sliding away from the path, not the entire vehicle. Then there was a bang as we hit the bottom of the ditch and began to roll, glass shattering and metal squealing as we tumbled twice and came to a rest. My mother was dead before the ambulance got her to the hospital. Not from the accident. Surprisingly enough, we weren't badly hurt from that. No. I found out later she'd had a heart attack. That was the reason for the accident, and why they called her death as soon as they checked her in at the ER. People talked to me about it after I was checked out. A nurse and a highway patrolman originally, and then my father when he came to get me and carry me back with him. I always told them what I remembered happening, and they looked puzzled but say very little else. The prevailing theory was that she'd known she was having a heart attack and was trying to get to the hospital when she wrecked. I asked my father once why, if that was true. We wrecked heading the opposite direction from the closest hospital. He looked uncomfortable and said he didn't know. Maybe she was in pain and confused, that it was better for me not to dwell on it. Healthy or not, I actually took his advice. I tried not to question it, and over the next few years it began to fade for me too. It wasn't until I was 18 that I was forced to face it again. My father sat me down and told me that, now that I was of age, I had inherited everything my mother had left behind. There was some money, yes, but also the house and everything in it. He told me he'd be happy to help any way I needed, and that there was no rush on it. He'd been making sure the taxes and insurance were paid on the house and the business, and the person running the print shop was interested in buying it if I wanted to sell it to them. It was a lot to take in all at once. I'd asked about the house and business before, and I knew that they were going to be mine, but I'd never thought much about the details beyond that my father was dealing with it. At first, I wanted to just push it all away. I didn't want the past infecting the new life I had here with new friends and better memories. The more I thought about it, though, I didn't want to hide from it. Hiding from things, being afraid of things, that's how they come to own you. I'd seen enough of that to know I didn't want to spend another minute with my past life owning me. So, the next week, I flew back to my old hometown. My dad offered to come, but I told him no. Partly because I knew she wouldn't have wanted him there, but mostly because I needed to do this myself. I'd look at everything, spend a couple of days there, and then sell anything I didn't want and never look back. It was hard at first, but by the second day I was tired enough of going through boxes and drawers that the fatigue and monotony drowned out most of the weird sadness I felt. I'd been dreading the attic from the start. It had been my mother's overflow junk storage, and there was no telling what all was up there. Running out of reasons not to do it, that afternoon I pulled down the stairs and headed up to see what was waiting for me. It wasn't as bad as I'd expected. A few small tables and chairs sat piled up in one corner, and there were a couple of moth-eaten rugs and piles of curtains sloppily wadded up against one wall. But otherwise, there were just a few boxes and a couple of old trunks, sitting crouched in the shadows like a pair of leather-bound coffins. Opening the first one, my stomach dropped. It was full of Dylan's stuff. Some of his baby clothes, pictures of him, a little Cub Scout outfit he loved to wear even though he wasn't old enough to be a real scout yet. Sniffling, I shut the trunk back and turned to the other one. For the first time since coming back, I felt tears coming. He really had been a great little boy. Who the fuck would lock this trunk? The second trunk had a small padlock on it, and I had no idea why or where the key was. After looking around for a minute for any sign of a key stashed away nearby, I went downstairs and got a knife and a pair of pliers. I didn't break the lock, but I did pry at the latch holding it hard enough that it finally popped off and skittered away into a darkened corner of the attic. Grasping the trunk lid, I realized I was holding my breath. It would be fine. Just more sad stuff, maybe. But probably just cluttered with old junk. What else could it... I froze as I stared into the trunk. What? That didn't make any sense. The inside wasn't cluttered or messy at all. Instead, it was neatly arranged into 6 columns of stacked, colored paper. Chartreuse number 2, my brain whispered to me. I knew the shade because Mom had always told me how important the color was for Dylan's flyers. You had to catch the eye without obscuring the details. The words and the picture were key. The ones in the trunk were much as I remembered. Not just the same yellow, but the same words, too. Have you seen me? And please call, followed by my mother's cell phone number. In truth, I could only see one difference between the flyers I'd grown up with and the ones I was staring at now. Heart beating out of my chest. It wasn't Dylan's sad, ghost face staring up out of that trunk. It was mine. I remembered the picture. I'd been getting dressed up to go to an athletic awards banquet for girls' basketball when my mother came in with her camera. She wasn't going to the banquet, of course. She had flyers to put out 2 counties up, and was already running late. But before my friend and her mother got there to pick me up, could she just take a couple of pictures? I just looked so pretty, and she was so proud of having such a pretty girl. I tried to resist. I was running behind, and she was acting weirder than usual. And I really just wanted her to go on and go before my normal friend and her normal mother got there. But then, she got that tight, almost angry, but not quite angry look she sometimes got, and I knew it was better to give in. Putting on my earrings, I followed her outside and posed next to the backyard fence. Once she snapped a few pictures, she seemed satisfied and headed out the door. I thought it was all strange at the time, but then everything was strange back then. And to be fair, I didn't really have that long to ponder on it. Because the following week, she woke me up in the dead of night and said I had to come with her, that we were going to make it right. I understood now what she'd meant, and what she had meant to do. Seeing that picture of a past me staring up from a week before I went out with her into the dark, I wish I could tell her not to stand there, but to run away from the thing she was living with. Because if she stayed, one night she'd be drug out into the black, and only one of them would be coming back. I closed the lid on the trunk with a shaky hand. At least it was me. And that was true. But somehow, that didn't make any of it better. I locked the front door without taking anything with me other than what I brought. There was nothing there I wanted to ever see or touch again. Though I was old enough by then to understand it wasn't a one-way street. You don't just own your memories and your truths. They own you, too. And even when you try to forget them and leave them behind, they never stop searching for you. All you can do is be ready. And when they find you, turn away from the beckoning hand reaching out of the dark. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed today's first of 2 stories. I want to take a quick second to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. It really helps the channel grow and reach more new people. I was checking recently and saw that around half the people who watch the channel aren't yet subscribed, so I hope you'll take a quick second to hit that button if you haven't yet. Alright, now on to our next story. When I was 8, I found a diorama box. You may have seen one before, or even made one for school or scouts or whatever. I had no clue what it was called at the time. Just a long wooden box with a circular hole on each side, and several small diamonds of frosted glass embedded across the top. I found it behind the abandoned Stonebrook Middle School, sitting like a gently placed present on a pile of broken pallets and old insulation. Even not knowing what it was, I could tell it was special. There was no way to open it, and its weight, its design, even the way the wood was carved, spoke of something out of the ordinary. And then I put my eye up to the box. Sunlight flowed and fractured from the opaque glass above, sending soft tendrils of luminescence curling up the walls and around the figures inside. I was seeing inside a house, probably the living room. The people were abstractions, just barely recognizable as people at all. And yet somehow I knew about them. That one was the mother. That one was the daddy. There were a couple of kids, and on the arm of the couch, a gray lump that I thought was a cat. All of them seemed to be sitting together, watching a box that I figured was a television. I didn't get what the point of any of it was, but it was weird and fancy, so it felt like a treasure to me. I took it home with some nervousness, afraid that my parents might think I stole it and take it away. When my dad noticed it that night, he asked where I'd found it. I knew enough to lie and say the woods instead of behind Stonebrook. Something bad had happened there when I was little, and even now I think most people avoid it. He considered me a moment and then picked it up, turning it over in his hands before putting his eye up to one of the holes. Huh. That's a weird thing, isn't it? Guess it's game night, huh? Ruffling my hair, he handed it back. Good find, sport. You'll be a pirate yet. I grinned with relief, but behind that was a growing sense of confusion. Game night? I waited until I was back in my bedroom, and then I turned on the bedside light and looked in the box again. It had changed. Instead of being in a living room, now they were gathered around what looked like a dining room table. Still a father and mother and 2 kids. I could even see the cat sleeping on a sideboard against the far wall. And on the table, tiny but distinct, was a board game. I didn't tell anyone about the change, of course. They'd think I was pretending or lying at best. At worst, they'd believe me and take it away. Instead, I looked at it every day, sometimes for hours. I was smart enough to hide how obsessed I was with it, though sometimes it was hard. I didn't want to miss anything, after all. The scenes were always in the same house, but it would move from room to room, and the number of people and pets would change over time too. But I definitely felt like it was always the same people and house overall. Most of the time. For all the magic of the changes, the scenes themselves were pretty mundane. Just a family living their lives, doing the things they do. Tiny statuettes, devoid of features, that somehow managed to always tell me exactly what was going on and how they felt about it. I remember when the son got into a fight in school, when the daughter had her first ballet lesson, the times the husband and wife fought, and the times they all came together to celebrate or comfort one another. When I was 16, I saw a change coming over the father. He wasn't sleeping much at all. And when he did, it was sitting up in a chair, away from his wife. They seemed to be fighting more. Everyone spent less time together. And within a few months, I started to worry they might split up. The scenes didn't change every day, so I had to wait until the weekend to see the latest developments. The father was holding the mother, and the children were hugged in around them too. I actually cried a little when I saw that. Whatever he'd been going through, I guess they'd gotten through it. Then, 2 weeks later, he murdered them all. The night it happened, he was back on the sofa, a laptop in his lap. I could tell it was late at night, even with the light streaming in. The shadows thrown against the floor and walls looked like demons surrounding him. And as I watched, wanting and unable to comfort him, I saw something tiny appear beside him on the sofa. It was a knife. Despite all my untold hours of watching the thing, this is the only time I ever saw it change. The moment of the shifts hurt my brain to the point that I started pulling away after the second one. And not just because of what happened in the scenes. He goes to the son's room first, and stabs him in the ear, bearing down on the blade with his weight. Then the daughter. He cuts her throat and belly open. The scene actually shifted twice there, to make sure I saw him make both wounds. Then there was the wife. That scene shifted more slowly over the next 12 hours or so. When the final transition came, you couldn't even tell she'd ever been a person. Just bits of abstract someone, spread across the bed and floor and even the walls. After that, I never looked in the box again. I bought a safety deposit box where it has stayed ever since. You might think I should have destroyed it or thrown it away. Couldn't quite manage it. Somehow, I think I knew that, well, even though I was done with it wasn't done with me. That became very clear a few weeks ago. haven't been myself. Terrible dreams and worse thoughts. I don't sleep. I fly off the handle at the smallest thing. Once I realized that I recognized what I was doing, it only made it that much worse. The past few days, I've really tried to do better, but I can feel it isn't going to last. I have to do something. My plan had been to write this all down, read back through it, and if it didn't seem totally insane, give it to my wife in the morning. It might not make sense to her, but at least she would know what was on my mind. Except, just now, I've seen it next to me. The knife. I've never seen it before. Well, not up close, and not for a very long time. I tell myself I have to get rid of it. Get it away from me. Away from my family. But I can't quite do that either. Maybe it's because it's not really my choice. Or because it's what I really want. Or maybe it's because of what I just saw. Because I did get up just now for a minute and try to throw it away. Even if it was just into the yard, so long as it wasn't in sight or arm's reach. I opened the front door and was raring back to throw the knife away when I saw it, hovering among the murky nighttime shadows of the tree line. It was an eye, monstrously gigantic. It looked this way and that, both terrifying and terrifyingly familiar. Because I knew that eye, didn't I? Knew the monster it belonged to well. It was me.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupeHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward. And if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.